Hi everybody, welcome back to Mando Lessons. My name is Baron Collins Hill. In this week's lesson, I want to focus on helping you find the right mandolin. There's lots of options out there. A style, F style, oval hole, F hole, there's mandolas, octave mandolins, mandocellos, on and on and on. There's lots of different mandolin family instruments out there, and I want to help you figure out what's going to be the best fit for you. Now everyone's going to have their own preferences on instrumentation. This is just coming from me. These are my opinions. I have been playing music for over 2 decades now, and I've figured out what works for me, what my needs are, and this may or may not be what works for you, but I hope it'll at least give you some insight into my thinking about my choices. First up, we have what I think of as the classic mandolin. Whether it's A style or F style, this is an A style, F style mandolins would have a scroll here and a couple points on the bottom. I don't have one of those at the moment. But A style or F style with F holes, so these holes here, that is sort of the most common mandolin you're going to come across. It's really great. It's a really versatile instrument. You can play bluegrass. You can play old time. You can play Irish music. Whatever the style of music is that you want to play, this is a really versatile option. Next up, in the broad category of mandolins, we have what I think of as the second most common option. This is an oval hole mandolin. Again, these can come in A style, like this, or F style. They can be modern builds, like this, or they can be old. A lot of Gibson oval holes from the teens and 20s are still out there. Great mandolins, lots of options to choose from. I have videos on my YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't already, where I demo some modern oval hole mandolins versus old ones, lots of other things like that, so check that out if you haven't already. This is still a very versatile mandolin. You can play all kinds of music, even bluegrass. A lot of people think that these things don't project in the same way and have the same bite for bluegrass chop chords. But if you look at players like Frank Wakefield and others, they often would play oval hole mandolins in bluegrass. So here's a little taste of this one. So those are the 2 styles of mandolin that are going to be easiest and most plentiful to find and buy and try out in the world. There are other kinds. There are bowl-back mandolins, there's flat-top, flat-back mandolins. Again, I have other videos on Mando lessons where I kind of showcase some of those different instruments. The next thing that comes up is often I get asked, I want to play one of the larger mandolin family instruments, whether it's Mandola, which is tuned like a viola, C, G, D, A, so it's like taking the E string off of a mandolin, replacing it with a low C, or octave mandolin, which is just an octave lower than a mandolin, or the Mandocello, which is an octave below the mandola, or you could think of it as octave mandolin to Mandocello is the same as mandolin to mandola. So the Mandocello is the big one. There are mando basses, but that's a subject for a different time. There's also a little bit of naming discrepancy. In the UK, you'll hear what in America we call octave mandolins, referred to as octave mandolas, but that is still tuned G, D, A, E, an octave below the mandolin. This broader mandolin family of instruments will often rope in other styles like things like Bazoukis, which there's a little bit of dispute about what makes a Bouzouki. In my mind, what really makes a Bouzouki is the tuning, often tuned G, D, A, D rather than E, so you're taking your high E strings down to D. There's also tenor guitars, which people tune a lot of different ways, but I like to tune like an octave mandolin, G, D, A, E, or like a Bouzouki, G, D, A, D. But those are single course instruments, so not double courses, G, G, D, D, A, A, E, E, like a mandolin. It's just one of each, G, D, A, E. So let me show you some of these instruments. So this instrument is for the most part a mandola. Now we're getting into a little bit of personal preference here. Because I play a lot of fiddle tunes where I'm going to be matching a fiddle player, and the fiddle is usually going to be in G, D, A, E, what I often find is I don't have the use for a straight mandola, which is C, G, D, A, because it's doesn't quite match with the way that fiddle players will approach melodies. So this instrument is a little uncommon in that it's C, G, D, A, but I've added a high E string to this build. It's a custom instrument. You're not going to find these out in the world, but this will give you a sense of the sound of a mandola. The trick with mandolas is you're going to need to find ways to play the melody in the same key, which is going to be a little bit of sort of transposing in your brain, because if you just play a G chord on a mandola shape, what would be a G chord on a mandolin, it's not a G chord anymore, it comes out as C. So in order to play a G chord, you need to play what on a mandolin would be a D chord. And you can see where this goes. It's sort of like, okay, I need to play G, but that's a D, and then my C chord is going to be a G chord, and my D chord is going to be an A chord. There's a lot of sort of transposition that you need to do in order to work that out in your brain. Eventually, you do get used to it, and you can make it work. But if you're looking to play straight fiddle tunes, I would highly recommend a mandolin over a mandola. That said, there's something really special about that mandola sound. If you're willing to do some transposition. It's also a little less traditional of an instrument, so it might not be quite as welcome in bluegrass or old time or Irish circles. Some people have some feelings about what instruments should be allowed. That's a topic for a different time, but just know that if you have a mandola or any of the instruments I'm going to be talking about henceforth, these are going to be much less common and maybe less desirable for classic kind of fiddle tune based music. All right, now we move on to octave mandolins and mandocellos. Again, I didn't find in my own playing that I really had a lot of use for a mandocello on its own. Again, with fiddle-based music, that C, G, D, A requires a lot of transposition, and it's just a less traditional instrument in a lot of the kinds of music that I play, so I was leaning more towards an octave mandolin, which again, I felt that I didn't really have use for a dedicated octave mandolin, so I tried to kill two birds with one stone, pardon the expression, and went for another very uncommon instrument, but this is a 10-string mandocello. Now, for the sake of this video, I want to talk about it in two different ways. First, we're going to think about it as an octave mandolin. So we're going to leave this lowest pitched string out for now, and we have G, D, A, E, just like an octave below a mandolin. So if I play a G chord, you get a nice octave below a mandolin G chord. There's no transposition to be done. There's no keys to kind of wrestle with. It's just there. The only thing to wrestle with is the new scale length, which is significantly longer than a mandolin. As you can hear, this instrument has a lot more sustain than your average mandolin. It's very ringy, and that also makes it less common for those kind of fiddle style music genres where you're really going to be matching a fiddle. It's going to be a lot of work. It's a sound that not everyone might think of as traditional. So it's something to keep in mind is sort of what is the use case if you're going for a larger mandolin family instrument like a mandola, octave mandolin, mandocello. Speaking of mandocellos, same instrument, but now we're gonna forget about these high E strings, and now we just have C, G, D, A. This is the biggest mandolin family instrument you're likely to come across. Again, there's a mando bass, but that's a whole different animal. And with a mandocello, just like the mandola, if you strum that classic G chord shape on a mandolin, you get a C. So you need to be doing all that transposition in your head, which again, you can get used to, but this is a very deep, beautiful sounding instrument, but it might not be the right pick if you're hoping to play in a group of fiddle players playing traditional music, because it's going to be a lot of stretching, a lot of transposition, and just a very kind of untraditional sound to some people's ears. So those are the big four in the mandolin family instrument world. Now, a lot of people will ask me, hey, should I get an octave mandolin or a mandola? I can't really decide, or should I get a mandocello? And if people are really undecided on those instruments, but they know they want a larger mandolin family instrument, I always recommend octave mandolins first, for a couple reasons. One is you don't need to transpose. It's the same fingering, you play what you know is a G chord, and get used to that larger stretch in your left hand, and you're gonna get a G chord. There's no transposing to do, it's just sort of a one-to-one. You can watch all of my videos on mandolessons.com or here on YouTube, and those will all make sense. You're not going to have to wrestle with different keys and different fingerings. Also, an added bonus of an octave mandolin is if you capo it on the 5th fret, you get a mandola. So you kind of get 2 for 1. Now, dedicated mandolas are going to have a slightly different sound, but to me, I love to capo an octave mandolin up to the 5th fret and get that mandola tuning. It's a really easy way to kind of get 2 instruments for the price of 1. Also, octave mandolins are much more readily available than mandocellos. If people really want a mandocello, I'm never going to steer them away from that, but mandocellos are more expensive, they're larger, they're so deep that they often are in the same range. They're actually lower than a regular 6-string guitar. The C, if you put the C on fret 4, C, D, E, that note is the same as the lowest note on a 6-string standard tuned guitar. So you're almost in sort of baritone guitar land. There's gonna be less people to sort of look to and say, how can I play this instrument in a traditional setting? Because it's much less common. Again, people think of it as less traditional, might be less welcome in standard picking parties, whether you're bluegrass, old time, or Irish, or any of those styles. That said, there may be a place for it, it's just much less common. Now that we've been through the big four of the mandolin family, I want to address a couple outliers. This is an example of a tenor guitar. This is an archtop tenor guitar, but they also come in flat top. You can get resonator tenor guitars. There's a whole world of tenor guitars that are out there to explore. And so this is tuned like an octave mandolin, G, D, A, E, but rather than having courses of strings, it's just one of each. So it's 4 strings. Tenor guitars are tuned many different ways depending on the player's preference. I like to tune them like an octave mandolin, and again, if you put a capo up on the 5th fret, you're in mandola territory. Some people will tune them like a mandola, so C, G, D, A. It's a little higher pitched. I really prefer the lower pitch of a G, D, A, E tuned tenor guitar. Other people will tune it like the top 4 strings of a guitar, so E8, D, G, B, E, D, G, B, E. That's like a baritone ukulele, or you can think of it as the highest 4 pitched strings of a guitar, and that's going to have all the same guitar fingerings. This is a mandolin channel. I don't really play that much guitar, so I focus on G, D, A, E and G, D, A, D on tenor guitars. Like the larger mandolin family instruments, tenor guitars are much less traditional. While if you tune it like an octave mandolin, you're going to be in that same range. It will have some kind of easy transposition into playing fiddle tunes that you already know. That said, it might not, again, be the most welcome at a really traditional session where you're just going to have fiddles, mandolins, six-string guitars, things like that, whether you're playing, again, Irish music, old time, bluegrass, etc. All right, last but not least for today's virtual petting zoo, if you will, this is a Bouzouki. Again, it comes with some caveats. So this is an instrument that I mostly use for backing up Irish music. Sounds like this. So this is an instrument with a lot of sustain. It's a very bright, kind of jangly sounding instrument. I love the sound of a bouzouki to back up Irish music. You're not going to find it as much in other styles of music. That's because some Irish musicians went to Greece in the late 60s and heard Greek bouzoukis, brought them home, tuned them different, and kind of integrated them into traditional Irish music. But it's a really great sound. This instrument in particular, again, has some peculiarities. This is actually what some people refer to as a cittern, which sort of makes it like my 10-string Mandocello. So this is tuned G, D, A, D. So it's like an octave mandolin with the E strings down to D. It gives it that very drony sound. And that's an instrument you're going to find a lot in traditional Irish music. This instrument has a low D below that G. So if you want, you can get even lower notes. I don't use that low D a lot for Irish music. There's actually a tradition of cittern playing. This is, again, a cittern with that low D, D, G, D, A, D. There's a tradition of this music, of this instrument in a lot of Scandinavian music, Swedish and Norwegian, and some Finnish music. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light on the different mandolin family instruments. Again, if you're looking for an instrument that's going to be the most versatile in a variety of different styles, be able to match a fiddle and follow the fiddle parts in any given tradition, a regular old mandolin is going to be unbeatable, really. If you're looking for that deeper sound, either octave mandolin or mandola or mandocello, by all means explore those, but just know that they're going to be a little less welcome in most traditional sessions, bluegrass, old-time, Irish, Scandinavian, etc. And there's also a tradition of having only one accompanying instrument, whether it's a guitar or a bouzouki, in some Irish music. So if you show up to an Irish session and there's 3 bouzouki players there, that's not going to be melody players' favorite situation because the bouzoukis are so twangy, tenor guitars are just kind of uncommon. So just know, mandolin, most versatile. It can pretty much play anything, and as you get into those other instruments, they're beautiful sound, but you're going to have to know that they're not going to be applicable in every musical setting. Hopefully this helped you suss out some ideas on what instrument is right for you. Again, if you're looking for more hands-on lessons, actually learning to play these things, check out mandolessons.com. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already, and look in the description. There's some links to everything I've talked about, the instruments that I play, all this sort of stuff. There's also ways to donate if you find this kind of lesson helpful, and there's a Patreon page where you can get access to lessons a day early, member-only live streams, things like that. But there's also a simple PayPal link if you just want to send me coffee money for the day. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.